Welcome, angels and all, on this 15th episode of 365 podcasts this year. And I've been talking about aligning with our purpose, because when we're aligned, the clarity that comes to us is amazing. And we know exactly what we're here for. We know what we should, and even the smaller things, buying groceries or choosing a partner or a house or a car or anything like that. When we are clear about who we are, it's just so much easier to make healthy, productive choices. And so I've been talking about being aligned with the soul, with who we are, not getting into autism, which is doing what we think we ought to do, which is living other people's lives. So it's bringing us back to our own life and standing in our own strength and standing in our own presence. And it's about being present to who we are. And so we've been talking about peace and using peace as a way to find our rightful place in the world and to make healthy choices, and about saying no and having the strength to live this life. And it takes diligence, because there are so many things out there at us, whether it's the television or whether it's our boss or whether it's partners and people and friends, and many of them are well-meaning, but they are not us. And a lot of well-meaning people like to tell us what we need to do or what we need to think. And it's very helpful for us to take a moment when we hear these things about what we should do and step into peace and have another little ponder. Is this right? Because the ego, as we said, the ego always speaks first. Logic always speaks first and loudest. And then spirit always speaks second and quieter. And so when there's a suggestion from the world, whether it's advertisers or whoever, it's a good idea just to step back and wait for that quiet second voice of spirit to let us know what is the healthy choice. And so often the healthy choice is not the logical choice. Often we're led in ways that go, why am I doing this? And we'll find out later that things we did not know that are about to happen, that logic doesn't know, because logic lives from the past, spirit lives in the future. And so when we step into the voice of freedom, if you like, the voice of peace, we're then stepping into a future that's known by the peace, not by Mr. Logic or Mrs. Logic. So we've been doing kind of spiritual, mental, emotional techniques, if you like. So I'd just like to talk about some physical things we can do to help align ourselves and bring ourselves back to peace and to integrity and balance and alignment with soul. So within our bodies, we have many systems. Obviously, we've got the heart system and we've got the lymphatic system and the nervous system. So there is another system that has two parts, which is the sympathetic system and the parasympathetic system. And they kind of work together. So it's either one's working or the other's working. They can't work together. So they each have a vital part to play in our physiology and in our lives. And so the sympathetic system basically helps us step into fight or flight. It helps us get into motion. If we want to take action, do stuff, what it does, it pushes blood into the vital organs, the things that we need to do to go and punch somebody or defeat ourselves from a mammoth or whatever. So it's the action system, the sympathetic system. And so that gets everything going. It dilates, it pushes blood into our eyes so we can see better. We can see saber-toothed tigers and angry bosses, whatever. And and so it takes blood to those action places. And then, so while that's happening, the parasympathetic system cannot work. So the parasympathetic system is kind of the opposite. And what it does is pushes blood back into the non-essential parts of our body when we're not in fight or flight, when we're resting, if you like. So, for example, the sympathetic system takes blood from our genitals because we don't need those when we're fighting. And so when we're in sympathetic mode, when we're in action mode, it's very hard to have sex. The penis won't be erect, vagina won't be lubricated, and so blood's taken from those areas and put into more the action areas. So when we are able to relax and take time, the parasympathetic system can kick in, and that's when we can have effective sex, for example. And we can only be productive, reproductive, if you like, while the parasympathetic system is in flow. So we can't reproduce. We are not fertile while the sympathetic system is. So when we're stressed, when we're in action, when we're worried, when we're bothered with things, we're not productive. We're not reproductive. We're not fertile. So we need to be able to reproduce. We need to step back into the parasympathetic system. We need to be non-action, contemplative, relaxed. And we all know that that's essential for having sex. It just doesn't work, basically, when we're tense and fired up and ready to go. So just a few things I've got here that the parasympathetic system, it certainly helps with sleep. If we're fired up and worried about this and that and the next thing, of course, we don't sleep. We're in sympathetic system. So we need to, before we sleep, we need to let go those worries and step into our parasympathetic system. And when we can relax and let the mind go, sleep is much better. And so, for example, some people say they can't sleep straight after having something to eat. And in fact, a lot of people say that after eating food, we should just go for maybe a little walk, just have mild exercise, because the body's in sympathetic mode because it's doing digestion, and it takes energy. And so having a walk, for example, a small exercise, kind of is in sympathy with the sympathetic system and helps the digestion. And a lot of people, if they feel like they've had a meal and they want to go to sleep, sometimes that sleep will be disrupted because the sympathetic system's trying to digest the food and the parasympathetic system's trying to let you go. And you can't go into parasympathetic system until all the food is digested. So we need time between eating and sleeping. Small exercise and then relax. And the other thing is, if we are watching TV, particularly a lot of TV, and particularly sort of action type TV or tense TV or the news, which is usually fear-based, if we're watching that news, it can be sometimes very hard to relax, to go to sleep. So it's a good idea to leave a space. If you're watching TV, particularly the news, leave a space between that and going to sleep, because it then gives time for the parasympathetic system to take over from the sympathetic, which is in action while there's tenseness going, while the news is on. And then the sympathetic can die away and the parasympathetic can rise, and we can then sleep a lot easier. And so the parasympathetic system aids in sleep, and it regulates lung mucus and trapping irritants and toxins. So our immune system works better when we're relaxed and then we're more healthy. So whatever toxins are going on from the air and the food we take and everything else around us, there's a lot of toxins. The elimination of those works better when we're relaxed. Our immune system kicks in when we're in parasympathetic mode. And so we're more healthy if we can be more parasympathetic with ourselves, so to speak. It regulates, it helps reproduction, helps with sex, and, for example, it helps produce tears and clear up eye problems. So even our eyes, for example, are better when we're less stressed, because the parasympathetic system brings blood back into the eyes. And it does many other things as well, but it also calms our nervous system. And in doing that, it helps us be more clear in our thinking. And in fact, it helps us access that which we cannot see. Access spirit, if you like. Access, what do we call that which is bigger than us? When we're in parasympathetic, we're able to, I dare not use the word channel, but we're able to be a little more psychic and perceive our best interests in our lives. So just bear in mind that when we're stressed, it's not a good time to make decisions. It's not a good time to have sex and try and make babies, because it kind of doesn't work. And it's not a good time to sleep or discern who we are and what we should do next. And that's a really good reason. So people use meditation or some way of stilling the mind, letting go the day, letting go the worries of the world, work, whatever, relationships and all that sort of stuff, money. If we can still our mind and allow those just to fritter away, and then there's amazing sort of insights start to happen when we're in parasympathetic mode. And there's quite a few different ways of activating that parasympathetic system. So the largest nerve in the body is the vagus nerve. And there's lots of ways. And so when we activate the vagus nerve, that activates our parasympathetic system. And there's a lot of ways, and I'll share these as we go through, but one of them today, it's very simple. You just run your tongue between your teeth and your lips, just around. So if you're about to have a stressful conversation, just do that. That will activate the vagus nerve, and that will activate the parasympathetic system, and it will bring you back to balance, bring you back to peace. So if you're about to do something stressful, have it one of those critical discussions, if you like, you will be able to approach the discussion or the argument in a much more balanced way. And there's lots of other things we can do, pointing of different places in our body. We can do particular exercises. Yoga is very good for all of these things. And even Pilates is very good for, it's a lot more, Pilates is a slightly more sympathetic system. But if we use the end of Pilates and bring ourselves down, we usually have a little, if you like, a meditation, very short. So that part of Pilates, which is, Pilates itself is the sympathetic system, but at the end, we normally bring ourselves down and return to parasympathetic system, so that we can then move out into the world in a more balanced, coherent way. So that's just one thing you can do. Just even if you're not going to something stressful, if you're just going out into the world, you just do this. If you're in commuter traffic or whatever, or someone cuts you off, just do that. It will help the vagus nerve then activate the parasympathetic system. And I'll be sharing lots of other little ideas. We won't go into those now. And just on the reproduction thing, I don't know, but I know quite a few people who have not been able to have a child. And they've tried and tried and tried and tried, and they haven't been able to have children. So then they finally adopt a child, and the next thing, the lady is pregnant. And it's almost like the trying, striving puts them into sympathetic system, when they're panicking, they're stressing, they really want to have a child, and they're doing all the right things physically, but their body's in sympathetic mode. And then when they adopt a child, they kind of give up. It's like, oh, we're fine now, we've got the child. And then pregnancy happens. And that's exactly the sympathetic, parasympathetic flow in action, if you like, or in proof. So, I wish you a parasympathetic day and a whole load of peace.